Broadcasting from the Blanchistan Centre. This is Phoenix FM.
The internet is a communications tool used the world over where people can come together to bitch about movies and share pornography with one another.
According to the Nerd Index, you should be upside down in a junior high toilet around the clock.
This is We'll do it live! Time goes in, time goes out. Never miscommunication.
It's over 9,000!
My name is Foxy.
The balls are in there. Do a barrel roll. Don't face me, bro. It's a trap. I'm a firing believer. Time to Hey, Charlie, wake up. Oh, God, oh, man.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the Nerd to Know Basis Show, airing on Phoenix 92.5 FM and all those wonderful places on the internet like Spotify, our website, and now YouTube. And once again, thank you very much for everyone who's discovered us on YouTube recently. And I have been reading the comments from the last one, which I really appreciate, so thank you very much for that. I am Cian, and with me is Kev. Hello.
Hello, Cian. How are your things?
I'm struggling. If my voice makes it to the end of this hour, it's a miracle. But you know what? Let's see how far I can make it. 10 minutes, 20. Like 5? You can play along at home.
Well, you know what? Where there's tea, there's a way.
And speaking of tea, instead of our random movie pick from streaming this week, we are picking random Star Trek TOS. So,
I see what you did there.
There you go. So, just to give you a heads up, we will be covering basically a lot of updates, like on Demon Slayer and Shrek of all things, and Spider-Man and all that. But as long-time listeners may have noticed, we've sort of started falling down a Star Trek rabbit hole. So, before I talk a bit about Prodigy, what have been your recent discoveries with, I suppose, for lack of a better term, vintage Trek?
Well, no, Cian, there's been no discovery. That's done. That's ended.
No.
But no, I've been making a page of systematically working my way through the entire Star Trek canon, not in any order, just in whatever suited my fancy. And I decided the time was ready to go deep dive into the original series. I would say I'm about like a third of the way through. I'm into season 2 now. And I think what I'm actually surprised about is how good it is. Like, not to denigrate something that, like, you know, just because it's old, but there's actually like decent time lead ideas about it.
Oh yeah, obviously, like, it repeats and nostalgia will do wonders for anything. But especially in that middle period of, like, I would say from about episode 11 onwards of season 1 to like episode 20 of season 2, it's, apart from the odd duds like the Apple, they pretty much like are all great hits, like, you know?
Oh yeah, and like it's a TV show from the 60s. There's gonna be some fine blue cheese among them. The episode where the crew meet the Greek god Apollo being one of them, and that kind of going exactly as you anticipate. But like, say one of the episodes I just watched is Nomad, the probe, basically like a prototype of what V'ger from the original motion picture ended up being,
or a probe like sent Ultron out by outside of it, like, you know, your typical alive computer type thing, like, you know.
Yeah, probe gets sent out by like contemporary Earth, gains super intelligence and basically accidentally becomes hellbent on destroying the human race.
Yes.
But I liked how it kind of worked it. Like, it wasn't campy. It was actually pretty serious. The thing was a pretty deadly threat. And it was clever having it logic itself out of like performing its task, because it had mixed up the fact that its creator was named Roy Kirk.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, speaking of Kirk, there's something I really, really like about early Star Trek, and I think that pop culture gets this wrong about Star Trek, is that although it is campy in some respects, I mean, look, there isn't an episode like with Jack the Ripper for no reason, but like the actors play it deadly straight. And actually, I think people conflate the way William Shatner acts with Zap Brannigan. You know, he isn't like a sort of a horn dog who like messes around the place. He is actually like a relatively straight laced captain, like, you know?
Oh yeah, no, like, there's definitely been like some character fanderization just over the decades. Now,
Hmm.
the performance is big, but it's meant to be big. He's the Errol Flynn. He's the superstar.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't understate just how lucky that show was to have Leonard Nimoy.
Yes.
That man plays an elf with the gravitas of a Shakespearean actor.
Well,
And,
I mean,
like,
I read his biography recently. It's just because he takes it seriously, you know? He like
Yeah,
thinks it through and all this kind of stuff, which not a lot of TV actors necessarily, but it might not be like a television actor's first instinct to do, you know?
no, and like again, Star Trek is be like looking at it now, 60 years on. Star Trek is just such an omnipresent thing that you kind of have to remember. In the 60s, it was kind of nothing. This
Yes.
was a campy like Flash Gordon wannabe show.
No,
And so
absolutely. Like it was pitched as a wagon train to the stars. So like you know how like Marvel, they like whenever they need like to find a new avenue, it's like, you know, it's superhero, but kung fu. It's
yeah,
superhero, but this. Like Star Trek was it's Western, but in space. Because that's the thing that was on TV at the time, you know?
of course, yeah. But yeah, no, the cast do an absolutely phenomenal job, and like it's headed by Kirk's big performance, Nimoy's stoic, like absolutely like serious in the scene, and then rounded out with DeForest Kelly, just
My favorite
the
character from the original series, yes.
and I can get that, yeah. Like there's a big energy there. It's that befuddled old man energy again.
But I think
Mirroring
it's
Kirk's
I
confidence.
mean, you are right, but I think it's more of a rock, paper, scissors thing. I think
Yeah.
like Spock and McCoy are like polar opposites. McCoy is too emotional. Spock isn't like completely remote, but it's not his instinct to be emotional. And
Hmm.
Kirk kind of balances the two of them out. And there's a lovely episode way, way down the line for you called The Tholian Web, where Kirk is taken out of the equation and the two of them have to like run the ship on their own. And you realize how essential Kirk is to the equation by his absence, like, you know?
Oh, excellent. Excellent. And like that's and of course like that's the extended cast, like the extended cast are all phenomenal where they shine. Takei Sulu is iconic. I'm surprised at how late Chekhov shows up. And he's been great so
season 2,
far.
I think.
He's
Yeah.
season 2, yeah. Full like 30 episodes after it had started.
I think not that it was a direct replacement, but I think Yeoman Chambers was written out in circumstances that were horrible, but you know shouldn't be repeated at 5. And like so, like they seized on the. Well, what if we had a Russian on our show during the Cold
which I mean
War?
that's another thing. Having active speaking roles by a Japanese man and a Russian man
Yeah,
in the 60s. Like
it's pretty
I
out
like
there, isn't it? Like,
yeah, no, like Roddenberry was pushing boundaries.
oh no,
Um,
absolutely, and like you know, it's still quite not quite formed yet. Like, I mean, both Decay and I think it's Walter Koenig will happily go on record and say, like, for quite a lot of their stories, they just needed someone to be a botanist. So that is Sulu's great passion this week, you know?
yeah,
But it's still the actors make it work, like, you know?
yeah, no, 100%. It's been refreshing. I was going into this expecting formulaic and expecting slow.
Mm.
And what I'm getting is actually like way more thought out than I was anticipating, which is why I was kind of leaving. As I said, I've been doing this in no particular order, but also spacing out what I think would be the good stuff with the not so good stuff. So I want to, I don't, I want to hear what you think about Prodigy, but I also don't want to know much because that's hearing that you liked Prodigy has set it up on course to be like, okay, this is going to be my palate cleanser after the original series.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Prodigy is more cousin to Voyager, but like, yeah, I get what you mean.
No, we'll see if I have a similar reaction when I get around to Enterprise, which is probably the last thing on my slate.
I am watching Enterprise now. It's just because doing the episode like 45-minute one a week thing is super quaint now. But I rather like it. It's a bit weak sauce Next Generation, but it's still enjoyable, you know?
Okay. I'll get there when I get there.
Mm.
And then at some point I've got to get around to the 70s animated series.
I actually enjoyed that a lot because a lot of now it is more kid centric, but a lot of them are just season 4 scripts of Star Trek with like the same writers and stuff, you know? Apart from the odd one with like giant Spocks and that kind of stuff, then you realize they're sort of like making up as they go along.
We got to fill time.
Oh, absolutely. One episode of the animated series, and I won't go into details, it's worth seeing, but basically there's one episode which is both a sequel to The City on the Edge of Forever, which I'm assuming you've passed now. The time travel back one.
I don't think so.
How did you miss that? That's like the second last episode in season 1. It's the one where they go back to the 30s.
Okay, wait. I think.
You think?
I've been watching these on the train to work in the morning. The details get fuzzy because I'm kind of half awake.
If you miss this is the most famous episode. You might have to go back.
I might have to go back.
This is the one that like makes people cry.
Yes. McCoy. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the McCoy goes mad one. Yeah. Well,
anyway, so the animated series has a sequel to that, and it has Spock's backstory in it, which is consistent across the movies, the 2009 reboot, and Discovery. So like, there's some heft to the cheesy animated show, like.
Okay. Hey, listen, it's not gonna be the first cartoon from the 70s I watched this year. I watched all of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, so I think I'm pretty primed for that.
And when you're done, I think I might have sent these to you before. Some dedicated YouTubers have reimagined episodes of Voyagers and Next Generation in the style with the proper like motion cycles and all that kind of stuff, which are exactly the same, lifted from He-Man. So you get to like recognize them really quickly when they stand at odd angles, like in SpongeBob SquarePants, or they run awkwardly towards the camera and all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant.
Oh, excellent. No, I'll have to get that off you because I did watch the anniversary shorts.
Yes, I said you. Yeah, that whole sort of like animated in theory type animation.
Animate the word animation in quote marks.
Yeah, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Like,
speaking of animated shows,
you beat me to it. I was like, I'll respectfully wait until he's done talking, and that was my mistake.
Well, speaking of animation that is not animation in quotey fingers. I've caught up with the latest season of Demon Slayer, only just this afternoon. And the thing to point out, I caught up with this afternoon because the latest season of Demon Slayer is 8 episodes long.
Well, that's just it. The last few seasons are kind of like mini arcs, aren't they? They go to a location and there's an episode set there or something.
Demon Slayer is in a kind of a weird position where because it is kind of dominating the like top of the viewer charts as like the most popular show like the anime this decade, it has had the luxury of having probably one of the most like bizarre release schedules I've ever seen. Because it had its first season, which was a pretty standard like seasonal anime season, which was about 24 episodes like separated to two parts.
Yeah.
which blew up, absolutely skyrocketed to success. Then they made the decision to have the next arc be a movie.
The train
pretty
one,
out of the blue.
it?
The train one, yeah.
Yeah.
Which pretty out of the blue, could have gone either way. The thing is, the world kind of fell to pieces, and this was the only movie that came out at that time and made $1 bazillion. I can't. It is wild to look back and just think about how successful Mugen Train was.
I have friends who went to see Demon Slayer because it was the only thing in cinemas and enjoyed it. I'd say not an insubstantial amount of people discovered it through that.
Oh, 100%. It wound up being the first movie I went to see after COVID. Just because, again, it was the only movie that had been released. I think within a week it had outpassed Your Name's sales. I think it might still be the highest grossing anime movie. I don't know. I don't think The Boy and the Heron Ape did it. But yeah, no, just phenomenal success. Which is why, to go back in the history of this podcast, which is why they've decided to then release the premiere of each subsequent season as a movie. The first time they tricked me. Lest you forget my little
your thoughts on this are well documented.
Well documented. They did it again with the second season, but I knew better this time. I did not pay money to go see a TV show in the cinema. But in any case, now we're here, and actually, we're talking about this just as kind of news have dropped. So the latest season just finished up. They're now doing the movie again, where the next, and I believe it's either the final or the penultimate arc now of the show is going to be a trilogy of movies that are going to be released in theaters. Dates have still to be confirmed, and it's not been made clear if the movies are going to be coming out in short sequence of each other, or if you're going to be watching these over the next 3 years. But all suspicion is that the first one will probably come out sometime middle of next year, just because that's been the typical the production cycle of the show has been pretty yearly. But yeah, Demon Slayer it's a uniquely positioned anime, with just how successful it is to get away with these sorts of odd release patterns. It seems like the show isn't doing anything isn't doing any filler. It's adapting the manga as the manga's arcs are broken up, and if one arc is significantly shorter than another one, then that's just how long that series is going to be. The current one is the Hashira training arc, which is basically the training montage before the finale. They're all of the Hashira are training the Demon Slayer Corps to fight the bad guy, to fight Muzan. And it's an 8-episode montage to get ready for the big one.
Okay, well, I mean, you say that it's odd, and it certainly is. But to me, I've really enjoyed keeping up with Demon Slayer, late as I was to it, because it is consistent in its own way. The arc drops, and it's either a movie or it's 7 or 8 episodes, and you can knock it out quickly and you enjoy it. And it comes out kind of fairly every year, something like that.
Yeah, pretty consistently.
So, it always comes back just as you've forgotten it, but it also doesn't kind of drag out over 3 months where your interest may wane and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Just to go to the Star Trek analogy, and I apologize for talking across you. It kind of feels like it's what the sort of 8 to 10 episode model that something like Picard was going for and missed epically. It's just do a big, long, epic story, kind of a movie, kind of a serial, leave everyone happy, get out of town quick, and then come back just as people have forgotten you, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, I was saying all that, not criticizing it necessarily for doing it. It's just, it's very unique considering anime release schedules are typically very regimented, kind of sometimes to the detriment of actual pacing. Of you have a season based on a manga, you have to cram whatever the pacing of this story is into 13 episodes, and that's your lot.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually to the benefit of Demon Slayer, and exactly as you say, it never outstays its welcome.
No, you're right. I mean, like, and like 8 episodes is short. Like, I mean, we talked about it before. I recently finished Mob Psycho 100, and they are 12, 13 episode like series, and they felt short too. But like with Mob, you'll get your odds. Like, here's a 3 episode arc, here's a 4. But there's none of that. Like you said in Demon Slayer, it's very lean, isn't it? Like,
oh yeah, no, and especially their 8 episodes, and those 8 episodes are whip fast pacing.
yeah.
Like, I finished it like an hour before recording, and I was like, well, what do I do now? You telling me that was a show? What happened? Where am I?
I think we talked about this before on the show, where it's like, by the way, hello, Darragh. We're not ignoring you. Sorry. Well, just everyone. Darragh's here. Hello.
Hello. We got
He
a ghost
just
in the
walked
machines.
into the booth. But I'll just finish off my point and throw to Darragh then, because like it sets it up. And in the first season, it's like there's 12. What are they called? Kiseki? The demons.
Oh yeah, I can't remember the actual name. I think they're just called the Upper 12.
The upper 12. Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize to the Japanese culture and all that, but I think they're called that. And so you're like, okay, I've got my mission statement. There's going to be 13 series. We're going to deal with 1 a season, maybe 2. Who knows? And this is going to be our show. Bit like Full Metal Alchemist. We've got our 7 things. We've got to take them down. That's our thing. And then in season
Good anime
2,
staple, League of Bad Guys.
yeah. And then in season 2, sorry, they kind of axe about 5 or 6 of them straight away. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess this isn't a staple. We're just completely in the wilderness now. But it still has its own little structure, because every season is kind of built around a mentor, isn't it? Like,
built around a mentor, built around a setting, and kind of built around a place.
it's almost video gamey in a weird way.
Yeah, I can see that. Everything is kind of a level. Yeah, I could definitely see. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, that's, I mean, manga authors kind of are in that culture of just, well, like us, nerd stuff.
Yeah.
They'll take a lot of inspiration from, video games and cartoons.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and do you think that this like 3-movie thing is going to pay off? Like, I mean, sure, like these things do ebb and flow. Like, I don't know anyone who's talking about My Hero Academia anymore, even though I still enjoy it. Like, Chainsaw Man is sort of seems to be falling by the wayside. Like,
I think the movie's like, I mean, again, if I'm sure it is what it is, these 3 movies are the end of it. So it can pay off, or it might not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to prove itself. Aside from the fact that, like, again, it is still extraordinarily popular anyway. Hero Academia is actually in a funny kind of place where, it isn't spinning the hype cycles anymore, but I think the dedicated fan base is there, and it's still huge.
yeah.
And Chainsaw Man's just like, it'll probably be 3 years before we get that next season. And anybody that is talking about it is talking about the manga, which is a wild ride. I think I had somebody describe it where Chainsaw Man no longer feels like a Shonen Jump anime, and at this point just feels like an Alan Moore comic.
Yeah, because I picked up like, I don't know, volume 9 or something like that in my library. And it was my first. Now, and that was admittedly my fault. You jumping in a volume 9, you're gonna get a bit punished. But it didn't feel like an action manga at all. It was weird and wistful. And like everyone is like talking about their souls and their feelings, and then random violence. It was like I couldn't get my head around the tone at all. Like,
I'll put it this way: one of the one of the latest chapters is an almost entirely non-conversational, non-verbal chapter about 2 characters, being intimate with each other.
Okay.
And it is so wrapped in layers of trauma and emotional payoff, and just so deeply entwined with the characters' backstories and relationships up to that point, where the manga's reader community absolutely exploded and was like, not Horikoshi, yeah. Oh, why can't I remember the author's name? Just calling the author an absolute madman. How could he do this, and why did this work?
Oh, fantastic.
Chainsaw Man is incredible. I
And
cannot
to be clear,
recommend it
I
enough.
don't mind waiting for something as long as it's good when it turns up,
Yeah, it's also Tatsuki Fujimoto. That's the name of the author.
Yeah.
I really did like the anime, but it's one of the few cases where I think it actually lost something in the translation to animation.
Okay.
Because his art style is so it's so particularly scratchy but expressive, and he has this way of just, even in tiny portraits, making the faces just pop with these absolutely huge expressions. And man, can that man draw people getting kicked in the nads. he has that down to a science.
Oh my god. Well, I mean, whatever you say about the adaptation, I will the Chainsaw Man OP, I suppose the term. I listen to it every day. It's my pre-class hype music.
Oh yeah, no, Kickback's a goddamn jam. Yeah, no, if we got one thing out of the Chainsaw Man anime, we got Kickback, and it's a net positive for the universe.
Oh, absolutely. Darragh, I feel so bad. Are you okay?
Football in the groin. Football in the groin.
Oh, we're not going to resolve this deadlock anytime soon.
No, so I haven't seen Chainsaw Man, and I've seen a bit of Demon Slayer, but I do need to get in on something real quick. I don't know how much time we have, but I'm just gonna go basically because at the moment the Euros are on, and I don't really watch football, but I know a surprisingly lot about it. However, I did watch random anime. So my random adventure took me to watch an anime this week, called Blue Lock. I had no idea what this was, didn't know what it was about. Went in, turns out it's incredible. So basically Blue Lock is about these lads, two specific. One is rich, one is bored all the time. Turns out he's like the greatest striker in the whole world. Japan realizes they can't win the World Cup, so they set up this military style super soldier training facility to craft the best strikers ever. And I'm assuming there's a lot of lore and stories and all that kind of stuff. There isn't. This specific one is about Nagi, so it's Blue Lock the movie episode Nagi, and Nagi is the guy who's bored all the time, and turns out he's the greatest striker of all time. It is phenomenal. However, it ends on a cliffhanger and it's very annoying, but I cannot wait to watch this. I think this is incredible, and it makes you really, really, really like soccer.
Okay, so it's a sports anime.
Correct.
Right. Unlike the last sports anime you saw, which you did not enjoy.
I didn't know. It's volleyball.
You've gone on a journey since the last time you were here.
I know. Well, here's the thing.
Have you done every sports anime? Is that where you were the last 2 weeks?
No, I just go to the cinema, and whatever's on in the cinema, that's what I watch.
There we go.
So, I will watch anything. I will literally sit there and watch anything in the cinema if I'm bored enough. So it just so happens that sports animes are the thing right now. So
you're like homeless, washed up, crusty at the side of the road.
I'm sorry. No, sports
hot dogs.
I'm sorry, Darragh. Sports anime have been the thing since the 70s, and Hajime no Ippo. This isn't a new revelation. This has been a constant for decades.
It is very new to me, thus it is new. New to me. But I have to say, I don't know, whatever way. So volleyball is kind of silly, particularly in an anime. I mean, there's only it just didn't hook me, But for some reason,
oh yeah, because George Orwell's football camp isn't silly.
No, it's a way. It is silly, right? But the way the action shots are done, it's not just kicking the ball. Like Nagi goes to this, he gets possessed by football in a way, and he just kind of goes completely Super Saiyan, and it's just this is actually, and then like at one point he leaves the corporeal realm, and it's just like, what the hell is going on? What am I watching? This is really good, but it's just so wild. So I mean, I had a really good time, and also the interplay and the characters are a lot more fleshed out, more than I just want to win this volleyball game. They're more like, no, I'm like, there's one who's really, really stupid, but like wants to be smart, and it turns out he wants to be smart because his parents were dentists, and you're like, okay, I can see that, you know. It's
Well,
just really great.
I mean, like I get what you mean, like because like a good sports movie, in a good sports movie, the least interesting thing about it should be the sport.
I
You
agree.
know,
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah,
it's just
that's
the
exactly it.
enabler of like good storytelling, like same
Yeah.
for like a pirate movie or something like that. You know?
Yeah, and that's the problem I had with the volleyball anime. It's like, one, it lied. I still don't know why it's called Dumpster Game or whatever it was called. At least with this one, you're like, okay, Blue Lock is the name of the facility and program they're in. So at least it makes sense, you know. It's look, I was like, the cinema wasn't really that full. It was a different cinema than I normally go to. So it wasn't free. I actually like paid to go into it. And I was just like, okay, I really hope this is good. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very entertaining.
That's awesome. Okay, I mean, like I'm glad that you had sort of a spiritual transformation since the last time you were here.
I did also see a Violent Nature. So Cineworld, again, we're not plugging Cineworld, but they do like a surprise movie every week or every couple of weeks or every couple of, I don't know. Anyway, I had the time off because I'm healing from an injury at the moment. So I was like, okay, I'll go to see this. And it was, I didn't realize it was a comedy horror because like it's a very by the book slasher movie. You know, there's these kids and they're in the woods, and they get killed by this guy who was wrong, and turns out he was like a camp counselor, blah 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 blah. Right? We've heard it 100 times before. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is like, I've seen this before, right? Like this
Yeah.
is so by the numbers. But the kills were so like gratuitously violent. Like there's a bit where he breaks some woman in half and then
Yeah.
pulls her head through her back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like,
You were
it's
reluctant to say the word hell, but this is fine.
well, I mean, I'm discussing what happened in the movie. I'm not like showing it, but so that happened, and I was just like, okay, this is way too far, and like people were leaving because they're like, this is too violent for me, and I was like, oh, I was kind of tempted to do so, and I have a very very high tolerance for this kind of stuff in film, you know, but then I realized after the movie, I was like, okay, it was okay, but it was a bit too violent, you know, but I realized then when I was watching some reviews of it or reading some reviews of it, they're like, oh, it's a comedy horror, so the whole point of it is, and I'm just like, it wasn't really funny. It was just
Yeah, but like, I mean,
gross.
if you've seen the movie and don't get what the movie is till someone tells you, the movie
Yeah.
hasn't done a good job, has it?
Yeah, but that was it. It was just
Like,
like,
you could
okay.
watch Shaun of the Dead and get that it's funny. Like,
Yeah, like there was nothing to indicate that this was funny, you know. It just was more, oh, that's unfortunate. You know, like there are certain things that happen in the film where you're like, oh, that would, that's just unfortunate. And then they're like, oh, the fact that it's a comedy. No, it's not really, you know. It was an okay movie. The kills were quite good, but it crossed that line when it was just like, okay, this is just genuinely uncomfortable to watch.
gratuitous,
If
like,
you if
Yeah, and
if
it's
you
not.
see that much if you see that many buckets of blood and cornstarch and start laughing, that's on you, not the movie.
yeah.
No, well, it wasn't even funny. It was like, as I said, like this woman was pulled through her back,
Yeah,
and
no,
you're
no,
just
I'm
like,
talking. I'm talking about the guys
Stop
describing.
it.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guys describing it as a comedy, being like,
oh yeah,
no, the fact that you're saying it's a comedy says more about you than the movie.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true. That's true. I didn't find it funny. I didn't find it interesting. It was very paint by the numbers. The only real thing that I had for it, that had gone for it, really was the violence. And it's like, okay, pointless violence for no reason is completely silly. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. They stole something from me, but we've seen it before. Like any kind of horror movie that does this, when initially when I went into it again, I knew nothing about it because it was a surprise screening. But once I kind of was like, okay, they're going for this, I was like, grand, we'll have some kind of cabin in the woods kind of thing. And that's a
Yeah.
movie that did this concept, one, way better, and two, had a point to it. This was just like, oh, let's just kill people in really weird ways.
Yeah.
Not for me. I didn't really enjoy it.
I get what you mean. Like, all of this, right, like you take it, reminds me of the movie version of like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies,
Yeah.
where it's like I think either the writer, the adapting screenplay writer, or the filmmaker didn't get that, like, just making your characters glib isn't the same as making your characters funny.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of like they're being sardonic and not really reacting to the violence, and that's kind of but it's not really the joke.
Mm.
It's a joke is more than what you say. It's the way everything's constructed. Like,
Yeah, and like there needs to be obviously with comedy it is subjective. Like I will take that, but then again, if you're finding that level of violence to be like, haha, that's really funny, that says a lot about you. To Kev's point, you know. But I just, you know, even going back, I just never want to watch it again. Not because I'm like, oh, violence, because you know, again, I have a very high tolerance for it. It's more just like, why, you know, why? What did this achieve? I just, you know, again, I've seen movies like this before. Buckets of blood kind of thing is, you know, and that can be fun too. It's just with this, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
next.
you know, funny. It's funny you're talking about that. I'm kind of getting that way with the boys as of late.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So I haven't seen this season of The Boys, but I heard they went really far with an episode, to the point that some people won't even talk about it on the internet, and I'm just kind of like, all right. But
There's
then
just
again,
like there's a couple of scenes where like because the boys has always been like big bombastic bloody gory pushing
yeah,
that as far as it can, and
yeah,
I think like some parts of it now it's just kind of gratuitous where you're just watching it and be like this is going on for way too long, and it's just not even like it's not again much like how you were describing the movie. It's not funny,
yeah.
and it just keeps going. And I'm
Look,
like,
Kev,
okay, we can finish. We can just keep. We can get past this, right?
but it's funny because on that point specifically, um, I don't know if you've read The Boys comics, at all. I don't think. Yeah.
No, I've seen bits, and I've heard about them, and I've heard
So,
it's just hateful.
oh, it's hateful. Like Garrett Ennis, like as a person, hates superheroes, hates
Yeah,
comics.
and yet he
And
keeps making them.
no, like he actively hates them. And you can when you're that's why I don't like The Boys in general. And I was kind of relieved. Like personally, I was relieved that they weren't following the comics because I'm like, oh, you know, you might actually get something decent. And that's why it was good because they just didn't follow the comics. Like, now we're going to tell our own story. But unfortunately, I've heard, and this was my fear with that series, that it was going to seep in. And it looks like it's fully started to seep in now. And the thing about that is you can't be like, oh, the source material. No, it's like, no, listen, it was bad. And now it's just going to get worse. So
Yeah.
it doesn't shock me. It is unfortunate. The Boys was phenomenal. Again, I haven't watched it yet, haven't got around to it, but I don't think I want to
it's
now.
it's not no. The rest of like this one episode just got a bit gratuitous. It's still not bad. Like the
Okay.
cast are still great to watch. Like Anthony Starr and Carl Urban are still knocking it out of the park.
Oh yeah.
I'll probably see it through to the end because they've announced. I think me and Keane mentioned this a week or two ago. They've announced that the next season is going to be it. They're cutting
Okay.
it after 5.
Okay. Well, look,
So
because
I'll probably yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, I'll probably see it through to the end and just kind of see how they wrap it.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You know, the comics themselves. I think I sold them all for a tenner. I had them all at one point. And again, I didn't buy them; they were just given to me, and I'm like, okay, I don't like this, because it is just hateful, you know. Like the Boys is just it hates the genre that it's in, and
I
if
had
that
that reaction with the Kick-Ass comic as well, actually.
Kick-Ass is a little bit like the second one specifically, yeah, it is very, you know, it
Well, I
anytime
only read the first one.
yeah, the first one is less bad, the second one is very much kind of it's
kind of
grim, you know.
kind of mean spirited. Like, I mean, I don't mind things being a bit like crass or a bit cynical, but like when you're reading it and the writer has contempt for the genre, the characters, and the
Mm,
reader,
yeah.
I'm like, what's anyone getting out of this? You know?
Yeah, I have no idea. Like that's why I was shocked that either of those things actually got, you know, some kind of remake or some kind of reimagining into their shows because it's like eventually this is going to seep in. And it's great that you bring up Kick-Ass there, Kane, because that's exactly why that second movie failed, because it wasn't that it was glib or it was fun. It was actively hateful, and it was hateful to the fans. And it's just, I don't know, I can't knowing what that's like. It's like anytime I used to see Holy Terror used to be in like certain comic book places.
Oh, that's the
You know,
Frank Miller,
yeah, the Frank Miller,
questionable
yeah,
story. Yes.
and it'd be like, and it'd be in with comics, you know, it'd be in like in with Batman comics or whatever, in like a kid section. You're like, have you read Holy Terror? You probably, you know, shouldn't, and that's kind of what, and that's kind of what those kind of books are. Now, obviously, they're not to the same extent as that, but there are certain comics that just because they're comics
Mm.
doesn't mean they're going to either one be for kids, two be something that you're going to enjoy, or three something that you can actually engage with on this like level. Like the boys never should have been made a TV show. Like if you've read where it goes incredibly far. And like one of my favorite comic book series of all time is Kitchen Irish, actually by Garrett Ennis. His Punisher run, his Punisher Max run, is actually phenomenal. Like Kitchen Irish is great. The Slavers, and that whole run where it's the Punisher going through and doing incredibly violent things to incredibly bad people, but there is a point to it. There is a story, and it wraps up nicely. I never got that with the boys. Obviously, Holy Terror is horrendous, and I never got that with Kick-Ass. You know, Kick-Ass 1 was a nice one and done thing, but the second one, it just, and actually, funny enough, to a lesser extent, this is happening with Kingsman, where people are upset with that whole genre as well because it's bad, or Argyle. And it's like, no, it's not that it's bad. It just has no soul. It's a product, and it's a product that's born from cynicism.
I wouldn't put Kingsman in the same category. I think it's
Argyle.
continually more
I, I,
excessive.
I said Argyle, not Kingsman.
Okay, well, I haven't seen Argyle. I
Yeah.
won't comment on that
And
then.
I liked Argyle.
Yeah.
I did like it, but I get why people
Yeah.
absolutely hate it.
But to cycle back to what you were saying, like the likes of, say, Frank Miller and Mark Miller, no relation. The arc that actually got me into reading comics was Mark Miller's run on Marvel Knights Spider-Man.
Yeah, it was great.
Like yeah, absolutely it is. And it's a real shame when you've got writers, like even I suppose Todd McFarlane is a bit like this in some ways, like, you know, where it's like they do really good work in like a franchise thing or an ongoing thing, and then their star rises, and then they get a blank check to do whatever they want, and the thing they do is like really gross and excessive, and it sort of sours what you liked about what they did in the first place, like, you know.
Well, look, we've seen that happen before in video games, you know, like with the rise of the superstar video game personality. You know, like Daikatana is like a case in point where John Romero makes Doom, sets up a studio, takes him like 10 years to make Daikatana, and it's awful. Different thing entirely, but it is kind of, you know, when there's, or even George Lucas, when he made the prequels, no one was like, hey, George, maybe don't do that. There needs to be some kind of editorial hand, and that's why in any kind of consumable art, there is the case of, well, this is my vision, but on the other hand, it's like, well, yeah, but how consumable is that vision for audiences, and particularly when they have something waiting there, and you see that very clearly in video games again and again and again. You see it in movies, but when it's in comics, it's a slower burn because it's a weird industry by itself, where it's like, okay, what are you trying to do? But I think when that adaptation stuff happens, where it's like, right, we're trying to adapt this to a new medium, that's when it really kind of either succeeds or fails. And how many you've seen it over and over again. Like, and sometimes it works out for the best. Again, I would have said The Boys is a case of, oh, you know, it working out great, but now we're seeing that it's just becoming
No,
no.
well, no. Listen, like the recent episodes have been gratuitous and pretty just kind of like dull to watch. They are still leagues more tasteful than what I've seen of the 9/11 excerpt from the comic. We'll say.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. Yeah. But yeah, like again, like just here's the thing. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I really want to read The Boys, just don't.
Don't.
Just don't. And look, I say that.
Darragh will hook you up. He'll sell you some for a tenner.
You
no,
know what?
mine are all gone. I sold them years ago.
No. Like, if you're thinking about this, you want to read something edgy. You want to read something. You want to read something gratuitous. You want to read something edgy. You want to read something violent. Go read Berserk.
Yeah, that's a much
because
better,
you
much
get
better call.
Much better, and you get something out of it. That manga has a heart.
Or look, even if you like Garrett Ennis and you're like, no, like Preacher was quite good until the same problems happened with Preacher. But I would say if you want something where you're going to be entertained the whole way through, Punisher Max, read that. Read Punisher Max. A much better series. and it has kind of all the edgy stuff in there as well, but there is like a whole reason to it. But yeah, like it's I don't know. I hope they can course correct and actually finish out strong because like I really like Karl Urban. Anthony Starr is great. I watched a movie with Anthony Starr, like it was some indie low budget horror movie over the summer, and he was great. I don't remember what it was called, but the movie was like he was really good. And the best
Oh
thing in it,
yeah, Red Letter Media covered that. I remember. Yeah.
yeah, he was like if you haven't seen it, just Google it. I'm not going to Google it here, but he was in it, and he was the best thing in it. But I think maybe the boys got too much too soon, if that makes sense. It kind of rose up now, and it's like it is hitting that peak. But again, like it's always been a
Right,
parody
was
of
it called
the.
Cobweb?
Well, look, no, it's been a parody of
No, I
superhero
mean
movies.
the movie he was in. Was it called Cobweb?
That was it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was great. Yeah, Cobweb was great. But the whole idea of the boys was a parody of the superhero celebrity kind of thing, and maybe in a very real sense, it is just kind of like we're sick of superheroes now. So even the parody is annoying us. So that could be it too. I just don't know. Like it's at a certain point, art imitates life. So who knows?
Yeah, I get what you mean, but it makes it more impressive because, like, it should be clear we haven't actually said anything particularly mean about The Boys as a TV show, and like with the Kick-Ass example, I find it really interesting, like when filmmakers take flawed material
Mm.
and make it into something that works. I mean, like you've got like the Kick-Ass, you've got The Boys, and like sure, going way back, I'm not sure how well it's aged, but like Sin City was like revolutionary when it came out because of the technology and the way it looked and all that, you know? What is the secret sauce that like takes something like The Boys, the comic book, I mean, and they make it work in an entirely different medium? Because obviously they must hold some reverence for it. Otherwise they wouldn't adapt it.
I think it's the characters because like
Okay.
that's the thing that really kind of holds it together and held it together is your actual like love of the characters because by themselves they are all very interesting. Like Homelander is one of the most interesting characters ever in that medium because he is for want of he's like Sentry or like Superman where he can just destroy the entire world if he wants to, you
Yeah.
know. And what do you do if he has no moral compass? That's a very interesting story to tell. The problem here is it's like they have to go further and further and further. And instead of building it on, well, look, we're going to tell a really good story, they have, even in the good episodes, and Kev, you'll probably be able to chime in on this here as well. Even on the good episodes, they have kind of built around those big, shocking moments where everybody talks about it. Hero Gasm was the big one. We can't go into what that was. Um, and then there was even at the start of the season or the start of the whole show.
I'll be honest, those are the bits of The Boys that lose me. Like
But
sometimes they shock me, but like usually I'm like in it and I'm trying to like kind of try and deconstruct the themes, and now and again I'm like, oh, really?
But see, that's what I'm
I
saying. That's what I'm saying. You
yeah.
asked about the secret sauce, and the secret
Yeah.
sauce is one thing, and what they hang their hat on is a completely different thing. And that's the problem with the series
Mm,
and the comic book. It's like they haven't fixed. Oh, this isn't working.
yeah. I mean, far be it for us to like critique The Boys. Like, I'm amazed it's made it this far without completely collapsing in itself. Like,
I think it grabbed that Game of Thrones kind of niche,
mm,
which was let's get the big shocking dramatic thing that happened that week. What's the most viscerally gratuitous thing that we can make happen on camera? Let's put that just in. I think it's kind of grabbed that niche and cranked it up to 11.
mm.
But it's definitely the wheels are spinning a bit.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
don't get me.
I go on. Sorry, Darragh. Sorry.
I was gonna say, don't get me wrong. Like those moments can work, and
Mm,
I do think there's a place for them. But when they're done for like, I think the Game of Thrones analogy is fantastic, Kev.
yeah.
Um, when the Red Wedding happened, it shocked everybody because it was just one, it was so horrific, and two, it was kind of out of nowhere, but then it wasn't. It was kind of hinted towards the whole, and the more you look back at that scene and the whole sequence, you're like, oh, how did you not see this coming, right?
Mm.
So it's okay when that's happening because it grabs everybody and you can build on it. With this though, it's like, why? What was the point? Like,
Yeah.
Which
Like, I mean,
I've actually,
I like The Boys when it's slightly subtler. Like, for me, the benchmark is still season 2 when you had Sean Ashmore, like, as the forgotten member of the what are they called? The Seven. And and he's being played by Iceman from the X-Men films. And like you've got that meta layer of like, the X-Men were once the biggest thing in superhero cinema, and now it's so long ago. And like I like when it kind of like obviously there's the obvious stuff like the parody of the Avengers and Joss Whedon rewrites and Justice League and all that kind of stuff. Like that's fine. But I like when it's sort of it interrogates the characters and the genre and does so in a way that forces you to think outside of what is literally there. Like, I do feel like the show's been regressing a little bit. Like, what was the Captain America guy last season? What was his name?
Soldier Boy.
Soldier Boy. Like I liked him fine, but I didn't think any differently about Captain America for having seen him.
Yeah, they like. I like Soldier Boy. He was entertaining. He was a cool kind of like different aspect. But again, they stopped short of using him effectively. It's like we have this character in the comics. He was used obviously fairly differently, but still the shades are still there. And because they weren't like we can actually do something with this, they kind of used a was a Storm. What was the girl's name? The bad girl.
Stormfront.
Stormfront, the Nazi.
Yeah. They used her. They used it to like ham fist in more stuff about her, and I was like, oh, okay, right, I get that, but at least. And then they went with the Avengers reference as well, and I'm like, okay, that's one element, but you could go deeper. It's like on one hand, it wants to push all the boundaries, and then on the other hand, it's like it stops short of going anywhere with them in a thematic level. So I think the problem here is it wants to have its cake and eat it too. And its solution to having less of one is having way more of the other.
Okay, well, I mean that's fair. I mean, Gen Z, what was it called? Gen V? The spin-off. The spin-off
That's
actually.
Gen V, I think.
Yeah, that actually really impressed me. And maybe it's because it was separated from its main characters. But I found that one much more hard hitting than some of the more recent boys stuff. I kind of felt like the world was being interrogated a lot more.
And that's what should happen. Actually, what this is like, guys? The plague? The Purge.
Yeah.
The Purge had the most interesting world of any kind of genre movie like that. And the second one was pretty good, but the actual TV show that came out, I don't know if you guys seen it. There was a TV show, couple episodes per season, was actually the single most interesting thing about that whole show.
Okay.
And it's because it interrogated the world. It told smaller stories with the same stakes, but it allowed you to actually like connect with the characters living their life, which was obviously lost in the first one, which is genuinely not a good film. The second one is quite good, and the third one, meh. And then they get progressively worse. But the actual series itself, focused in on, it had like the big violent moments, it had the spectacular kills and stuff, but it still had like real people. And the boys, obviously, because it's a superhero thing, it's harder to have real people being there. But when it did kind of treat Homelander and Maeve and stuff like real people, that's when it was at its strongest. And yeah, look, you had the silly stuff with Deep and that, but it was still absurd because these characters are supposed to be real, and it's moved further and further away from that. And I think if that could be why the secret sauce or the sheen is off it. Like I don't know. Again, I haven't seen the season, but from what I've heard, it seems to be that's kind of where it's gone.
Kev has pointed out that we've hit time, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I think we could probably keep talking about the boys for another hour.
We didn't even get to Shrek 5 or Spider-Man.
Well, Shrek 5 is going to be. I think Shrek 5 is going to be evergreen. I think we can talk about Shrek 5 any time of the year.
What's the Spider-Man news?
No, it's just I was surprised that there's going to be a Venom 3 this year.
Oh, I'm absolutely not. No way. That makes loads of sense.
I'm not. I'm definitely personally funding those Venom movies.
Release the Craven cut.
I love the Venom movies as well. I think they're phenomenal. You know what, guys? Crossover, Madam Web and Venom.
Isn't that
Madam Venom
what they're doing?
Is it? I really hope so.
Well, I mean, they're in the same universe.
I hope they are, because I can go see
it. They are. They're Spider-Man. Did you not get a Spider-Man vibe off Madam Web?
Believe it or not, Keen. No, I didn't, because they never used the word Spider-Man or Peter Parker.
And
You
you can
interrogate the
and-
second
and-
word of the title a bit there.
and we can interrogate that, and you can interrogate that, listener, by listening to our Madam Web panel that's up on the feeds now,
And the two
along
shows
with all
that,
the other shows,
and the 2 shows we did about.
and the several shows where Darragh saw that movie 5 times.
6 times.
God damn it! You can listen to Darragh's truly endless thoughts about Madam Web on our feed. Now on YouTube as well. We're re-uploading a lot of our old stuff. And you can find all the links to all of that on our website on nerdtoknowmedia.com. There as well, you'll find our Patreon if you want to kick us a few bucks. We deeply appreciate it. And then, as always, you will find us back here next week, probably talking about Madam Web.
And for real, guys, like, we do really appreciate everyone who's liked, subscribed, and commented. It's really cool to see the growth on the channel. So if you want to join there and actually like interact with us, because we do interact, go over to Nerd to Know Media on YouTube and you'll find it there. Literally all the shows gone all the way back. Like, the shows there from when we just started. I think basically there's three to four uploaded a day, and then I'll like do clips or shorts or whatever, and they're up there too. So genuinely, if you're listening to us on Phoenix or on Spotify, go over to Nerd to Know Media on YouTube and subscribe. It'd be really great, because then you'll get access to everything, and you can also interact with us as well. So we do genuinely appreciate that. Real quick before we finish up here, we're going to be doing a panel. Our next panel actually at Comic-Con, which is going to be on the 21st of July. It's run out of Griffith College in Dublin, so super central. Our panel is going to be on Japanese horror and kind of exploring different aspects of that, different games. Similar to the one we did a couple of years ago at JCon, but obviously updated, expanded, and hopefully with you in the audience. So if you haven't bought your tickets yet, please go over to okamicon.com. Check them out on social media as well. We'll be linking to it on our social media, and buy your tickets. We're going to be there on the Sunday, but it's a whole weekend event. So we hope to see you there. If you're going, pop along and say hey and check out the panel.
Cool. Well, for this week, we'll wrap up then. I've been Cian. They've not been Cian. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Alright, so you're listening to the podcast, you're like, hey, I'm not in Ireland, how do I get in touch? Well, TuneIn has you covered. That's how you can check us out live when we're on the radio. You go to TuneIn and download the app, or you can check out the live streams on nerdtoknowmedia.com or Phoenix 92.5 FM. If you want to get in contact with us, it's very easy. Nerd to Know Media everywhere. Nerd to Know Media on Twitter, Nerd to Know Media Instagram, Nerd to Know Media on Twitch, Nerd to Know Media at gmail.com if you want to reach out via email. Hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.